You know the thrill of picking a winner. But instead of just running to the window for a quick payout, I play smarter. I invest with MorningLine. MorningLine is a more sophisticated way to use your skill and bankroll without putting it all at risk. Own a piece of the horse with a piece of each purse. Buy, sell, trade, anytime. Keep the action rolling without burning your bankroll. This is playing the ponies, elevated like a boss. MorningLine. Own the game.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Daily Racing Form YouTube. I'm Gino Buccola alongside Mailloux with producer Bobby helping us out. We're going to preview the Pegasus World Cup Filly and Mare Turf. That's going to go as race number 10 on Saturday at Gulfstream Park. Before we dive into that field and preview that one, I want to let you know about one of the new sponsors of Daily Racing Form content, morningline.io, SEC regulated marketplace where approved participants can trade licensed interest in racing's biggest stars. Be part of championship bloodlines. Just visit morningline.io. Buy, sell, trade, own the game. This Saturday is Pegasus World Cup Day, Ashley. It's top 5 now on the card, I think, since its career. Top 5 racing day on the calendar, I'd say, like with the Breeders' Cup, and then you've got the Triple Crown races. Travers Day is always an awesome one. 13 races, 8 stakes races, 7 graded stakes. We're going to preview all of them for you right here on the Daily Racing Forum YouTube, all of those graded stakes races, and you can get the past performances, the clocker reports, and the DRF picks over at shop.drf.com. So let's talk about one of the big ones, Ashley, the Pegasus World Cup Filly and Mare Turf. It's going to go as race number 10, $500,000 up for grabs for the fillies and mares in here, 1.16 the distance in this one. And wow, when you look at the morning line for this field, when we're talking about this on Wednesday, I think 9-2 is your morning line favorite, which is Whiskey Decision. You have 5-1 on In Our Time. I mean, there is no standout in this field at all. You can make a case for just about everyone in here. You can make a case against just about everyone in here. It is a wide open betting race.
And your longest shot on the board's 20-1.
Yeah.
And is it a stretch maybe for Ready for Cheryl? In my opinion, yes. To win, it's probably a stretch, but she is a grade 2 winner. She's faced Caitlin Her Greatness Breathaway, who she's to face again, and she didn't embarrass herself by any means. So she's not impossible. So really looking forward to this race. I think, in my opinion, all the Pegasus races, very competitive, but I think from a wagering board and the morning line, I'm actually most intrigued by the 2 turf events.
When we move to the Timeform US Pace Projector, we'll see how they think this race sets up. When you look at our selections too, you and I have a lot of different horses in there when we move to selections. That usually means it's a pretty competitive race when you can go many different ways. In Our Time's best chance, Ashley, is getting the lead. She was 3rd in this race last year, but she's just won for her last 9. She's the type of horse who really runs her race. She's out front. She's forward. She doesn't always have the finish, but feels like the race kind of goes through her from a pace standpoint.
It definitely does feel that way. And listen, she lost by less than 2 lengths last year. And it's kind of funny when you look back to that race and Be Your Best wins. Who's that? Her stablemate. And yeah. I think from a pace perspective, at least, I will be really curious to see not what she does. We know what she's going to do, but what happens to moving on up?
Her right outside.
Who's to her outside and has a fair bit of early foot, should be a little bit more fresh now, second off the freshening. I think this pace could actually be really, really intriguing the way it's run.
Let's meet the field for the Grade 2 Pegasus World Cup Filly and Mare Turf race number 10 on that awesome Saturday card at Gulfstream Park. We start out with Ready for Cheryl. She'll be making her first start since October the 4th. She is a Grade 2 winner, but we were kind of hitting on this earlier. She's recently been behind Breathaway, Creval d'Oro, Caitlin Her Greatness, In Our Time. Not out overmatched by all that much, but she is going to have to turn the tables on a couple of these.
And she did feel like she was putting it together a little bit more late in the season last year. And you go back to the Dance Smartly at the 1.16 distance. She had to roll from off of it. She comes up with a solid effort, but Breathaway and Caitlin, her greatness, just simply were better. And I think there is something to be said now about her second start in a row. I know there's been time off, but at this distance, in comparison to when we saw her 2 and 3 back at 1.125 miles, 1.25 miles, they had to cut her back somewhat drastically. Another crack at it. I do think it helps her chances. Always have to, give a shout out to Roger Atfield on the grass, but this is a tough spot for her.
Heredia is next up. She's a grade 2 winner. She wins the yellow ribbon, and then she steps up and faces grade 1 company in the First Lady and the Matriarch. She didn't run all that poorly in either of those races. It just looks like she was a bit overmatched. Like she's 5th and she's 6th behind Simply in Front, Suggesta, Schwazia, AG Bullet, some horses that we were just talking about, and in some quality races. So I don't think she's overmatched in a field like this. I think this feels like a softer spot than the last 2 races she was in. Does she have a shot in your mind?
I don't know if it's a ton softer, Gino. I think it is a little bit softer in some regard, but I will say I feel like she hasn't gotten the right setup in those races.
Yeah.
Her win, you look at her win stateside, she went gate to wire because what? No one wanted the lead. They almost went 25 to the half, 49 and 3, and just Hernandez took absolute advantage of that, like he should have, and they win it. But at least in the First Lady, she had a little bit more pace to run at in comparison to her race at Saratoga and the Della Rose. And she loses by 1.5 lengths. I don't think she got the trip last time out in terms of the pace scenario. I think at least here we've talked about it. She should have more pace to run at. And I do think with that in mind, she's a player.
I've always liked Destino D'Oro. It's one of those things where when you play a horse and they win like first time out, then you follow them throughout their entire career. That was the case with Destino D'Oro. Came back, was second start, had a brutal trip, just missing the Jessamine. I was waiting for her in 2025 to return, and she shows back up in June. She runs really well in her first start. Then she wins the Pucker Up, and she shows a little more positional speed that day. Then in the Dueling Ground Oaks and the QE2 Cup, the Dueling Ground Oaks, she was, I think, had a little bit of sneaky trouble down inside. Just did not fire at all in the QE2 Cup. Not at all. I don't know if it was the class level. Maybe it was. Maybe that those groups were just too tough for her. But after a little bit of time off, came back in a much better effort on December the 13th at Gulfstream Park when she was able to run down and one more time. I think that sets her up well for this, Ashley. I think she's moving in the right direction. She's one of these horses who is lightly raced with upside, doesn't nearly have the resume or the accomplishments as some of the others, but I would not be shocked to see her take some big step forward, to take some big steps forward this year and start out with one of those big steps on Saturday.
Yeah, you mentioned it. I mean, at least she gets her confidence back last time out. She got the pace setup that she needed. She took a big step forward. I like all of that. I still think, though, she's getting back into the deeper waters. We've talked about some of these horses exiting grade 1s, whether it was their last time out or a couple of starts back. She's only got one of them, and she didn't show up, where some of these other horses, we'll talk about Breathaway, I don't think she disappointed last time out in a grade 1. And, there's 2 ways to look at Destino D'Oro. Do you think she's just going to improve here? Or is she in too tough? I could go either way, depending on, the day of the week. I could be talked into either side of it.
The key for me, as someone who likes her a little bit more than you do, price. I can't take less than like 8 to 1 on her. I think she is, if she is in that like 8 to 1 to 12 to 1-ish range, that is fair. If she starts getting bet down more than that, then I don't think she's quite shown us enough to deserve that in a spot like this yet. Let's move to Breathaway, who you were just talking about. She is in career form right now. She's now a 6-year-old mare, a grade 2 winner. The grade 1 Matriarch was a bit tough for her, but she did not run all that poorly there. She's proven at Gulfstream Park. She's proven at this trip. The only concern with her, I guess, if you're going to say why wouldn't she win this race, or what happens if she doesn't run that well, it's that she's not that fast early. So she does need things to kind of develop for her up front, or she needs the right kind of trip. She needs to stay out of traffic, but she will consistently launch late. And I've been very impressed with her. It seems like even recently, Miguel has her at her absolute best.
I would say so. And I think, there's the same argument I mentioned with Heredia not getting the pace set up. I think, if you look at just, in my opinion, the Matriarch, apples to apples, you look at the 2 of them. Heredia always had the jump on her, and Breathaway was closing better and still obviously didn't get the pace set up that she needed. So I would have to prefer her there. I thought her race prior to that at Del Mar, Fine Special One, was good. you mentioned just the form. I like her body of work in here, and I think the pace is going to, suit her well. But I also want to factor in maybe the figures in some of those races, not her best. She tends to fire pretty good and pretty well on the Gulfstream Park turf course.
We move to Classic Q. She's pretty versatile. You still sort of look at her last few races. She's on the lead, most recently in the Miss Revere. She finishes third behind Lush Lips, who is a very, very nice filly. Couple starts back, she's fourth behind She's So Spicy, who goes on and wins a Breeders' Cup race. You see Fionn, who's also a really nice 3-year-old in that division last year. She's got some versatility. She can be close up. And I think that versatility may help in a race like this in a big field where we're not exactly sure how fast they're going to be going. Can she maybe sit few lengths off of it mid-pack if in our time goes and she's sitting just behind? Do you think Classic Q is good enough? Where does she stack with this group?
Yeah, she was the one that I think when it came down to it, making the call, she's sort of a fringe player in here for me because look at her last year as a 3-year-old filly. Really, really good record. Kind of like that she's been able to win on the lead. Typically, that's been her best running, but she's been able to stalk. We saw that in Churchill in April. We also saw at Keeneland, she was able to roll from far off of it with that pace help of going 22-3, 46-2, and just came up a length and a half short behind Admit, who I think is a really, really nice filly. So we'll see. I think last time out, they tried to put her back on the lead and she tired a little bit at the mile and 16th trip. And another one that I feel like we talk about this all the time. You try different things sometimes with turf horses. You go long, you sprint, you go long, or the opposite of that. Marquesi, I feel like, does that quite a bit, Gino. And, they experimented with her. It didn't work out the best, but she's done nothing wrong since stretching back out.
Caitlin Her Greatness won the King's Plate back in 2024. I respect her quite a bit. My main concern is I just think it looks like on paper she's a better synthetic horse. That's where she's brilliant. She's fine on the turf. She's solid. She could probably win a race like this and beat a lot of these horses, but she does seem to be a little bit better overall on the synthetic. Her last turf win came back in, I think, July of 2024.
I would have to agree with that in terms of the assessment and the surface for her. And I think, when you look at her, she's 1 for 5 on the turf. Her second behind Breathaway in the Dance Marley, it was good. I didn't necessarily love her in that spot. I was a little shocked in some ways she went off favored, but you talked about it. She's a plate winner, a horse that has fared well in stakes races down the page. I don't know. I don't want to compare her to Moira because you also think of Kevin Attard and Moira and the turf work, but I can't use her in a spot like this because I don't know really what price she'll be in here. I don't necessarily love her on the grass. So I'm going to have to pass. And, I hope she runs a big effort. I'm a big fan of hers, but I don't see it here on the grass at Gulfstream.
Whiskey Decision moved into the Chad Brown barn last year, raced 3 times for Chad Brown, and we saw her step up in her 4-year-old season. She did take the step from 3 to 4. Her speed figures got better. She won 2 of those 3 races, Ashley. One of them was a graded stakes race. She just feels solid in here. In a race where there's no standout, she's kind of lightly raced. She has some upside. We saw her step forward last year, and if she has some improvement this year, that probably makes her pretty tough. Those low to mid 90s buyers that she was running, that's towards the top of this field, right? Like that, those would be very tough.
It would be. It's interesting as we go back to her most recent effort, the way that she wins this. She's got a good turn of foot here, Gino. I really like what she's able to put together and the way that she closes. I think it's a good effort. The question, though, is has she faced this level to her point in her career? I don't think so. I actually think this is deeper for her. Is the price going to be right on her? That's another question. I'm curious. It's Chad, it's Flavian. Now, it's worth noting, I think the thing that I like about that effort is that turn of foot. I think it's going to suit her well. I think there's others in here that we talked about, like Heredia and others. They might be too far off of it. I don't think she'll be that far back. And Chad knows how to spot them. I think, coming here, there's a lot of confidence. And she sold in November for $1.5 million. She stays in this barn. They're looking for a return and, they do everything right. They keep her with the connections that have been able to find her in the winner's circle 2 out of 3. So we'll see. I like her in here, but I just wonder the price. That's kind of the deterrent in some ways.
Proctor Street is really sharp right now. She's won 3 of her last 4. She's won back-to-back races. She was over at Churchill in the Cardinal going a mile and an eighth most recently. She was traveling well behind horses. She was in the two-path. She found some room. I thought it was visually a pretty nice win. So she just feels like she's moving in the right direction right now, Ashley.
She certainly does, and it's kind of interesting. They didn't go all that fast in the Cardinal in terms of the fractions, and the pace somewhat fell apart. I know Awesome Check sort of had the jump on her throughout, but I like the way that she was able to close in the final stages. I don't mind her going back to a mile and a 16th. We'll see. Another one that's got a kind of a deep closing style, not necessarily always, but that's typically what she's done. So I think that's why her Cardinal speaks a little bit more. Maybe it's because they went slow. Maybe it was intentionally, but I like that she split that group, Gino. I'd like to see her do that again on Saturday.
Creval d'Oro was a recent winner at Gulfstream Park on December the 20th. In that race, Creval d'Oro defeated Moving On Up. They both had a little bit of traffic. I mean, I actually thought Creval d'Oro probably had more of a troubled trip than Moving On Up that did that day, and Creval d'Oro was able to run down Moving On Up. So now, like, looking at the last 3 races, she's won 2 of her last 3. She likes Gulfstream Park. She's proven at this trip. Can you build a case for this gal?
We'll see. She's another one that she sells in November. They get her in the Jose D'Angelo barn, and they're ready to roll in that first start. She was a big price there in the Swanee River. I thought it was a good effort. She didn't have a perfect trip in there, so she does have the makings of being a pretty good competitor here now as a 5-year-old. I just don't trust her. I feel like I say this a lot in some of these races where you see a horse that has a great resume, but there's just something about him, Gina, that you can't get past. It's kind of races like 2 back where she chased in vain. She flattened 4 back. When she's spot on, she's very good, but it's not necessarily in back-to-back races.
Lightly raced horse with some upside, and one more time finished behind Destino d'Oro, and one more time was favored that day back on December the 13th. She made an early 4-wide move. I mean, but she certainly has ability, Ashley. You can see she's just had a tough time staying on the track. She raced a couple times in 2024. Then she has a year off till September of 2025, shows back up, wins after the long layoff, then immediately has to go to the bench for a couple months, which is usually not what you want after you've come right off of a layoff. So she still seems like she's got some upside there, but she's got a pretty tough draw out wide. I respect what she's done so far. I'm curious if she's got another step or two up in front of her.
I think she could be trending in the right direction. She's obviously had roadblocks along the way, right? The year layoff, then a couple of months in between her races, but she did nothing wrong in the Tropical Park Oaks last time out. And
No.
I think she's bred to get better a little bit with age and more experience. I mean, look at her pedigree. This mare has been one heck of a brood mare. She's a half to Simply in Front. She's a half to Honor D Lady. And she's a half to Church Down. I mean, her family screams stakes pedigrees. So I expect more from her in the future. I could go either way again on her in here. I think a lot would have to do with the price. And in general, Gino, I think for me, she's more of an underneath type.
In Our Time feels like one of those main speeds. We've talked about her a few different times. She got the lead in her most recent start. That was in the Matriarch. She cleared by a length. She was a fine second that day, and she finished in front of a couple horses that are in this spot. Just one for the last 9, though. And you can see she has the 4 wins, but she's fine finishing second. She's been second 6 different times. Third in last year's race, as you pointed out, to maybe a little tougher. At least the winner probably a little classier than some of these, but this race might be more competitive overall. Like, I don't think you can eliminate as many horses in this race as you maybe could have a year ago. So you can look at it 2 different ways. What do you do with In Our Time? Irad's aboard for Safi Joseph Jr. and the controlling speed.
I use her. I don't use her on top. I know that much, but I do use her in the fact that you mentioned she's the controlling speed. Mile and a 16th, probably pushing the envelope a little bit, even though she has won at the distance. You factored in the race last year. You talked about the difference maybe in the quality. The draw doesn't help her, but go back to last year, Gino. She still had to work from the outer post. She wasn't the outside, but sort of similar thing. She had one other horse to her outside, and she comes up a little bit short. So I'm going to use her. In terms of her figure, she's been pretty consistent. I know she throws an 82, but it's a 5.5 furlong sprint at Keeneland. I'm going to draw a line through it and still say, hey, even though I'm drawing a line through it, she ran fine in the Franklin. So I'm going to use her underneath in this spot.
And we round things out with moving on up. She was inside. She was third or fourth, sitting just behind the leaders. She got a pretty good setup. She moved to the lead at the top of the lane. She had about 2 length lead. I didn't see very many excuses that day. I like her, Ashley. What I like about horses like her is their running style, because she's got some speed. She can put herself in the race. She can sit. She can finish. But you were hitting on this earlier. I'm really concerned with what she's going to do from way out wide, because she doesn't want to be too far back. But if she tries to stay close, she could be 4 or 5 wide out there. I don't think she wants to necessarily battle with a stablemate right next door within our time. So the trip, is going to be really, really interesting to see what Zayas can do from out there.
Yeah, and I almost feel like if she was more towards the inside, she'd sort of be like a little bit of a wise guy horse in here, and the fact that she's pretty consistent. She doesn't need the lead, but she could be part of the pace. She could press the situation. You have to factor in the stablemate situation of it. I find her a little tough, at least from this draw, to get a major piece in here. But I think she could make things difficult on her stablemate if they decide to do that.
Round things out and move to selections here. Honestly, when I go through, I'll do my asterisks or my circles or my stars, and I have like almost everyone written down in this field. Like,
Yeah.
you can make so many cases for and against. You're going to go with whiskey decision. Talk us through some of your selections.
Well, first off, I think there's so many horses like I'm passing on, but they're not impossible. It's just
Yeah.
I like a couple horses a little bit more than that. I mentioned it, Whiskey Decision. She does need to step up, and I'm not saying she's a lock in here for those reasons. This is the deepest waters, in my opinion, that she's faced to date, which others, they might be kind of getting a little bit of a softer competition. But I thought her late turn of foot last time out in New York was really strong. I like that, she's purchased for 1.5. She stays with Chad, seems to be doing what she needs to do to get prepared for this. So we'll see. It's going to be her first effort at Gulfstream. But the others, I think my main horse that I'm hoping she gets another win is Breath Away. You mentioned Miguel Clement's done a tremendous job with her. I think she's been in really good form, and I think she gets the pace set up that she needs.
Yeah, we both respect the speed of In Our Time. I do think Destino d'Oro has been one of those horses I'm a fan of. I'd love to see her show up in a big spot if she's the fair price that I was mentioning, like 8-1-ish or above. So I'll put her on top. Classic Q is one that I'm intrigued by. I think she can sit a nice trip. She's got a little versatility to her. And then the one that I left off that I would probably make sure to include in pick 4s and pick 5s is Breath Away, who you talked about. I included Heredia. I think they're pretty evenly matched, but whoever may be the better price may be the one that I lean towards. It is a very, very competitive field in the Pegasus World Cup filly and mare turf. One of the best races you'll handicap on Saturday. We wish you the best of luck.